You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as a guitarist and as a singer-songwriter with both his solo career and as a member of the multi-platinum and multiple Juno award-winning band, the Sheepdogs. So welcome to the podcast, Ricky Paquette. Ricky, how are you? And how much fun are you having out on the road touring with the Sheepdogs over the last few months? That looks like a fun group of guys. I'm just going to say that.
Oh man, it's been going great. I'm doing great. Life is pretty good. I mean, we're getting back out to being able to play music live, which is my first passion. I love life and stuff, but for a minute there, I kind of had to find some other kind of things to do inside the house for about 2 years. So it's kind of good to be out there again, and it's been going really, really, really well. It's been a lot of fun joining the Sheepdogs.
As I've been interviewing all these amazing world-class musicians during basically the entire length of the pandemic, you can really see how it's affected musicians almost more so than any other industry. I mean, the airlines were hit and, restaurants were hit bad and different businesses, but musicians, I mean, you make your money mostly on tour, and the live event industry was just decimated overnight. So I've really been able to see the inside scoop and how a professional musician like you that makes their money playing live, having to stay busy or find other income streams.
Yeah, well, I kind of consider myself kind of lucky in that aspect. I mean, if we go back just before the pandemic, I mean, it's a bit of a long story, but
it's a deep dive. We got lots of time.
It's a deep dive, so I'm trying to see where I'm going to start here. We're going to probably go back before this, but if we're talking about the pandemic now, like just prior to this, I had decided to take some time off, and I started at a very young age. I started playing like live shows and touring. I was like 13 or 14, so I did that for a while and stuff, and then look at like 2019, I decided, I was like, you know what? After all these years of touring with different artists, having done my own solo project when I was a kid, I needed to kind of rediscover myself and start writing again for my own personal project. It had kind of been like lurking around in my mind for quite some time. And I have a good friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a very long time. I don't know if you're from Ottawa, right?
Yep.
So you probably know Trevor Finley.
Yeah.
So,
he's a local legend.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he moved out to Nashville maybe 15 years ago, and we had kind of been in touch every now and then. And it's like, you know what, I kind of need a change of pace, a change of environment and stuff. So we started talking, and we went to NAMM together in LA, and we started talking about, why don't you just come and spend a week at my place? Well, I'll take you around town in Nashville. And at that time, I was like starting to be kind of into country for some reason, which I had never really, really been into country before. So it all sounded pretty great. So I decided to, take some time off. I told everybody I was kind of taking some time off from the Quebec scene and the Canada scene, and I was just gonna sell everything, buy an RV, and go on a bit of a road trip with my girlfriend and get inspired. So I went straight down to Nashville on December 26th. I'll always remember. It was pretty snowy outside to leave with a 35-foot RV that I basically converted into an entire recording studio and had gear in there. And
you're probably happy though as you're driving, as the snow is in your rearview mirror though.
Oh, I was so excited. It was a great moment in my life. Did that for a bit, and it was great for a couple of months. And then what happened. The pandemic hit in March, and then I remember seeing on the news, like, it's time for all Canadians to come back home. And I thought I was watching a bad episode of The Simpsons or something. And my mom was calling me saying, "Are you all right? Are you seeing what's going on in the world?" I'm like, "It'll blow over. We've seen these things. I'll just give it 2 weeks." And So I wasn't really paying attention, and then all of a sudden life changed. And um, what happened is I had to come back, and I was pretty devastated because things were going really well. I started writing. I'd put out a new single, "Hello." I was like, I'm on my new journey, and I was really excited. And all of a sudden, that was kind of like just taken away from me, and taken away from pretty much everybody that I knew around me. I was like, so it didn't feel all that bad in one way, and it felt really terrible in another way. I felt like at least it's not just me, right? It was a global thing. So I figured, okay, well, this will be kind of over after the summer or whatever. So I kind of stayed at my parents' house, kept writing, just got all my studio stuff out of the RV. And then kept writing. So in my head, I had this long break of like an amazing, I hadn't had a summer like that in basically all my life, because all my summers were like packed of like shows and traveling and not really seeing my friends and stuff. I mean, they were great summers. I had, I was like doing music all the time, and it's all I ever wanted to do. And all of a sudden, I was like, yeah, I got time on my hands to go to the lake, and then I got time on my hands to write, which I hadn't done in years. And so I did a bunch of demos, and then I thought I was going to leave again. You know, near when the winter was going to come around, I was like, okay, I think I'll be fine. I'll leave again. Well, that didn't quite happen. So that was like the second hit I took, and I was like, okay, well, I gotta park this RV somewhere, and I can't live in the RV in Quebec. It's like -20, -30, and what am I gonna do? So I had all this time on my hand to kind of put together a studio and get into that mindset of not really being on the road. And I enjoyed that more than I thought. So one thing led to the next. And obviously, I was pretty devastated to not be able to like go out and play. But I decided I was going to start writing on Zoom with people and doing demos for people, and started mixing stuff for other people and including myself. And I kind of discovered a new thing I knew I already liked, but I kind of honed in on the craft and got myself some more gear, throughout the gigs. And I was like, you know what, I kind of like dig this. So uh, then I got a building. Something happened. I A friend of mine had bought a building during the pandemic, and he couldn't really rent it out. So he said, "Why don't you go live in there?" I was living at my parents, and I was like, "I need to find a spot to like get all my stuff." And I was also living with my girlfriend and stuff. So I said, "Why don't you go and visit this place?" Man, this place looked amazing. So we had a little arrangement. I threw all my gear in there. So throughout the pandemic, I had this giant building to myself with a
That's
bunch
like
of
the
gear.
zombie apocalypse where there's just
It
nobody
was
else there.
crazy. So it kind of kept my mind off of the negative side of things, and it got me pretty creative. Obviously, I was seeing all my friends around me like having to get jobs or not knowing what to do, and I felt kind of bad because I think I made the most out of that time off. And if I may even be bold enough to say this, I kind of wish I was able to do that again, but in a smaller period of time, like having like 2 months off to relive what that felt like for me. It was freeing. Like I really enjoyed the fact that I didn't have a real schedule to follow. And for the creative part of my brain, that was really beneficial. And then obviously after being off the road for X amount of time, it's like it started to build up inside me. It's like I needed to play. So obviously that came back into my soul too. And it's like, yeah, I'm pretty happy to be back where we're at right now. So don't get me wrong, I'm super happy to be back on the road. But the pandemic was quite the little kind of weird time in my life that I kind of enjoyed, to be honest. I kind of feel lucky to be able to say that. But yeah.
Do you think there's any way that moving forward, now that you know how good a month or 2 months off to just refocus and re-energize and all those things, is there any way to work that into a schedule yearly moving forward, where in between, the Sheepdogs probably recording the next album and going on tour and your solo stuff, is there any way to just look ahead and say, you know what, for this one horrible month of like December or something? I guess you don't have horrible winters in Texas, but anyways, is there any way that you could maybe put that in now that you know how beneficial that is?
Yeah, and I've started to do that. You just said I'm in Texas now. That's basically what I'm doing now. And for sure, that whole situation is going to change how I operate yearly. Um, I love, my family. I love my friends in Quebec and stuff, but I just can't take the winter anymore. And it's like it's not the high season for musicians all that much. So, and I see how like being away from distractions kind of and being inspired by different things too. Like I said, I'm in Texas now, and that's basically what I'm doing. Obviously, this whole tour is happening, and now I'll have like 2 months off, and I still live in Quebec, but I've decided to not be in Quebec for the winter time, and I'm going to take some time off in the sunshine with the family. I've got a few things lined up here and stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to come back here, every year because I love this place, and Austin's great. It's got a great music scene, and some cool friends are kind of here around here and stuff. But for sure, uh, I was talking to Ryan from the Sheepdogs this morning, and he was saying, "Oh, sorry, how are you enjoying the couple days off?" And it's like, I'm just realizing how much I enjoy having one thing to deal with at a time. I used to like scatter and like do studio stuff and then be on the road for my own thing and then with another band. I didn't do like a ton of different bands. I wasn't really into that, but I like to focus on one thing at a time, and I think I'm going to keep doing it that way if I can for a very long time because I it feels a lot better to me. So yeah, having like that 2 month period a year, it sounds like a lot, and and I'm not going to say they. I'm not asking for like 2 months vacation every year. It's just a change of pace. It's like retrospective. It's also time to create. Like I said, not having a specific schedule helps. Getting into the zone for me is something I really like, but it takes a bit of time. Like it's pretty. I've had to do it before, but I mean, having just a little 2 hour slot to write something in a with somebody on a date. Like I don't like those restrictions. Mind just we sometimes have to deal with them, but if I can help it, I'd like to have like I don't know. It might not be 2 months every year, but I feel like the winter time is a good time for me to get away from my hometown and stuff. So yeah, for sure. I think I'll keep this going for sure. I think it's very beneficial. I think actually, even for non-musicians, it'd be beneficial to have a different outlook on life, even traveling and being inspired by different things and having different perspective on their own lives and on different perspective on the world too. I mean, I think it's super important.
Yeah, a lot of Canadians, if they can afford it, they go away somewhere hot in the winter, right? A lot of people go to
Oh
Florida. In
man.
your case, Texas. My case, normally every winter I go to Mexico for at
Oh
least a
yeah.
few weeks. And you talked about the message during the pandemic from Trudeau, where he looks into the camera. I remember
Yeah.
that because I was in
Yeah.
Mexico, and you were hearing all these warnings of, oh, things aren't great. With the pandemic, things aren't great, things are getting worse, and you're just kind of ignoring them. And then I remember that exact message, and you did a good
Oh yeah.
recreation where he basically like spoke into my soul, and he's like, if you're Canadian and you're seeing this right now and you're not in Canada, this is your last warning. After this, I cannot guarantee your safety. I cannot guarantee you getting back to Canada safely.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 days later that I flew back. So it's the same as you. We got the same warning, and noted we ended up back home. So
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit about Texas, how you ended up in Texas. So this is a good segue here because I always start the episodes by sharing with our listeners how I know the guests. So I'm all about
Oh yeah.
networking and building community and friendships. So the guests want to know, how do you get someone like Ricky Paquette of the Sheepdogs? How do you get them on the podcast? Did you know them before? In a lot of cases, I do know the musicians beforehand. In this case, what happens is when I finish an interview, I then ask the guests, hey, do you happen to know anyone that would make for a great guest in the future? And in this case, this comes from this comes from a Canadian who's now in Texas. So this is guitar legend Gordie Johnson of Big Sugar. After our interview, when I asked him, who can you think of? He said, Ricky Paquette, the great Canadian icon, Gordie Johnson chooses you to
Thanks,
tag
Gordy.
in to the podcast. And
Yeah.
that's how we ended up here today. And I wanted to start off this episode powerfully. So I reached out to one Gordy Johnson and I got some kind words to share with you. So this is
Oh
from Gordy
man.
Johnson, a Big Sugar. He was our guest back on episode number 77. This is what Gordy has to say. Let me just set this up properly here.
Come
Okay.
on.
So Gordy says, rock and roll guitar playing has become the most predictable and mundane of all styles, to the point that I hardly pay attention. Then suddenly we meet this guy, Ricky. I can watch him play for hours. Just when you think you know what's coming next, he plays something so imaginative and passionate that it grabs your attention and reminds us that rock and roll is risky, frisky, and soaked in whiskey. He's the kind of guitarist that makes you want to run home and practice. So that's from the great Gordy Johnson of Big Sugar. That might be the best quote ever. I got to say that again. It reminds you that rock and roll is risky, frisky, and soaked in whiskey. How good is that?
I'm speechless coming from that guy. That's crazy. Oh man. Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be able to say that he's become a great friend. And oh man, those are super kind words. Like, it's so strange to hear that from. I think I'm gonna have to use that quote in my bio.
I'll have to like
Yeah.
send you the exact quote and send you this video clip so you have it as documented proof from Gordy
Well,
Johnson.
talking about Gordy, if we're digging into that, I mean, I've known about Big Sugar. I mean, I grew up in Gatineau near Ottawa, and I like to say that I learned pretty much all I know about music listening to Shea 106, the classic rock station in my dad's garage and stuff. And Big Sugar still play to this day. They play like, I don't know, 10 times a day. It's crazy. Like every time I walk in there, still to this day, it's like Big Sugar song number one. And then we're out in the yard and another Big Sugar song comes on. So I've known about Big Sugar and their sound and stuff for years. Uh, and the way they come from the blues and they kind of integrate like rock and roll and
Little reggae.
some reggae and some different, just the sounds are so different. I always liked them. And then I kind of moved away from my parents and lived in Montreal and was into other stuff. And uh some other bands from Montreal and from Quebec worked with Gordy and stuff. So I kind of knew he was doing some producing stuff. Forgot about that again, and I was touring with different artists, doing some producing and recording and writing and touring with other people. And then when it came time to do my own thing after coming back from Nashville, the whole thing happened. I had this kind of opportunity to have a record deal with a Quebec label, and I had a whole bunch of demos. And then they started asking, well, we're still in the pandemic, but if you had like to make a list of who you'd want to work with as producers, like who would it be? And so I was like, man, I don't know. Like I haven't really thought about it all that much. I was focusing on songwriting, and in my head I was like, oh, it'll kind of happen when it's time. But the time kind of showed up quicker than I anticipated. Basically, I wasn't thinking I was going to make an album like right away. But it seemed like a great time because I was off from all my other projects. So I was like, let's make the most out of this time. And I had a few other names on there, but I thought about it. I was like, Gordy Johnson is definitely one of them that I know is Canadian. It needed to be Canadian producer also. So I was like, you know what? I'll put down a couple of names. And the management at the time, they reached out to some of the other guys and weren't really getting any feedback. But I think it took like one day or something. They wrote an email to Gordy's management and stuff, and I remember it really didn't take very long. They got an email back, and I can't remember what it said, but it said somehow they were interested, they were intrigued or something. So the first step was kind of like to get on a phone call with Gordy and start talking just to feel the vibe, because Gordy doesn't really just do a gig to do a gig. Like he wanted to know why I wanted to work with him and who I was as a person. So we started talking on the phone. I'll always remember the first time I spoke to him. I was at in my parents' basement, and I had just come out of the shower. My hair was all wet, and I was like, "Oh man, I got this phone call coming." I was like stressed out. I was like, "I don't know how is this gonna go? I never met the guy. I don't know what kind of person he is, and like, what am I even gonna tell him? Like, I was all that stuff that goes through your mind, obviously, when you're like trying to figure out why this is happening at this time, and in the weird time in my life, it's like all of a sudden I'm gonna be working. How am I even gonna get to Texas to work with this guy and stuff? So I always remember I said, "Oh, I'm just ready for our conversation, nice and fresh out of the shower." And say, "Well, I'm not nice and fresh out of the shower. It's really hot here in Texas." And so it all started as a very, very kind of down to earth conversation, and that really put me at ease. I was like, I feel very comfortable with this guy. And then we started talking about music, and I kind of got pretty intrigued because his whole approach was, let's talk. And not even we talked about so many things way beyond music before we even started talking about if we were going to record together. He really wanted to know me as a person and ask me a few questions, and then we give each other a time and date for next week, and I had to think about certain things. And he kind of became this professor to me, which was
He's like a
very,
guru, musical
yeah,
guru.
musical guru. And what I really appreciate is like throughout his conversations, I kind of it really was helpful for me to dig back into my deepest roots of the reason why I started playing music, of the reason why I wanted to do this again, like doing my own project, what I wanted my new project to sound like. Because, we talked about me doing a whole bunch of different styles of music with different people. And so, in his kind of Gordy way, he was pretty sneaky as to how he would ask that to me. What he wouldn't ask like a direct question, and then he'd come back with like really like amazing lines and saying like, I was really into country at that point. I'd just come back from Nashville, and then one thing led to the next, and we started making more like rock and roll music again. I was like, man, this really feels like me. And we didn't have to think about it or talk about it all that much. I'm sure he has, and I kind of did in my own way, but it's not like we said, okay, I want my album to sound like this. None of that really happened. It was basically like a big ping pong game because unfortunately we were never able to be in the same room to make this record. So it all started off us kind of writing together and stuff, remotely through Zoom and all that, thinking we were going to wait it out and be in the same room to make this record. At one point, it's just, time was passing by and we weren't able to kind of find the time, and we didn't want it to, you know, we didn't really want to wait for 5 years to make a record. So I sent him a couple of ideas, sent me back some like tweaks. He made me work on some lyrical stuff. That line he said about like the soaked in whiskey. I could totally hear Gordy in that line. It's amazing. He's a great lyricist. He's very inspiring guy. Like, I mean, I knew him as a big sugar rock and roller with the whole reggae thing going on, but now that I know him, he's an amazing guy to analyze a situation and just make the best, like put everything he thinks is the best together, and not really uh mess with the core essence of what it is, whether it be lyrically or musically. I feel he doesn't care about perfection. He cares about something that makes people feel something, which is something for me that was like, that really got to me. I was like, you know what, at a point where I was hearing all these new country stuff things happening, and I was like really into like making things perfect. He brought me right back to reality and into my really deepest like roots, like I said. And it's like the southern rock stuff, the old blues influences, the country stuff that I liked. That I and my parents on my mother's side, they were like really into country, and I didn't really know where the country thing came into my like into my life because I considered myself more of a like a classic rock kind of dude. But my mother's family they were way into like outlaw country, and then we talked about that, and it's like, yeah, I like Nashville. I thought about throughout our conversations, I felt it was a little on the pop side of things. So we dug into the deeper outlaw country roots, and you could totally hear that on the record too. So it was a very cool adventure to work with this guy. And I mean, I could talk about this guy for so long, and we now have these great conversations. We talk about music, talk about guitar, and all sorts of different things. But oh man, I don't even know where I'm going with this, just because it's actually mind blowing that we got to do this, and I hope we get to do it again for sure.
I was going to say, even if you didn't end up working with him, just having that original phone call with, a legend in Canada, someone you grew up listening to their music, just that phone call alone would have been an amazing, memory to have.
Yeah, and talking about a memory, it just hit me now. It's like one of the songs that that started it all, and I remember him telling me this afterwards. After our first conversations, we started talking about songs and started sending him some lyrics and some song ideas. I sent him one song that was called "New Beginnings." It was an idea of a thing that I wanted to say in this song, and so a couple of lyrics, and it was like a ballad kind of thing, and it was like about having a new beginning. If it all seems to be ending, it might just be a new beginning. I was talking about the pandemic in a weird way. I wanted to have that feeling, because at that point I was like, you know what, this whole thing happened, but I also don't feel like it's the end. I feel like it might be a new beginning. So he sent me back uh like a raw track of like what he thought the band, after all our conversations about talking about my favorite bands and stuff, how he thought. He said I remember he sent it to me. It was around Christmas time. I can't remember if it was actually Christmas morning, but it was around Christmas time or like New Year's. And I always remember getting the email saying it was like rough demo or something. And I said, okay, I gotta go listen to this. So my dad and I went in the basement where I had kind of set up my studio, and I pressed play, and I was so happy. I was speechless. And I remember my dad looking at me and saying, "This is it. This is it." I was like, yeah, I think our conversations were like they were very beneficial. It had everything I wanted in there. So I called Gordy up and I said, "Man, you hit it right on the nail." And then he was so happy because he told me afterwards, he sent me the demo and went for a ride in his truck with his wife and said, "Well, this is either gonna make it or break it, because that's what I think we should be doing through, after X amount of time, because it took a while before we, at that point, we hadn't really talked about really recording yet. It was just maybe this is gonna happen, and we started kind of just discovering each other. So at that point, I think that was a test for him, and it was it's a track off the album. It's called "Sacrifice Fly," and
It's
it's
near the end of the album, right?
near the end of the album, and it's I liked that song a lot. It represents like the new beginning of Ricky Paquette. Basically, that was the first song we worked on together. Oh man, I'm just reliving all those moments in my head at the same time as talking about
That's
them.
good. That's what it's
Yeah,
all about here. It's where whatever
yeah,
comes up, and I think normally we go back to the beginning, work our way
yeah,
up, but I think we're so far into talking about your album Sparks from
yeah,
2021 that we should just keep going with that, and then we'll go back to the beginning afterwards.
for sure.
It
Yeah,
seems like
yeah,
this is where we should be right now. This is what's coming up. This
yeah,
is what's the memories that are coming
yeah,
in, and the space that you're in right now. So you were talking about with Gordy, he was saying, it's not about being perfect. It's more about making people feel something. It's more about capturing a moment. And it just brought up the interview that I did with him, where I would tell him, this is my favorite guitar solo that you have with Big Sugar. And he would say, oh, it actually sounds like that. It sounds so unique and sloppy because I picked up a guitar. He said, I picked up a guitar that was missing a couple strings and said, like, screw it. And he played the solo on a guitar missing a bunch of strings. So it's like all sloppy and he can't play the notes he wants to play. And that's, the one of the famous singles he has, or one of the famous solos and one of the big hits that he has. And, he was talking about the main thing with him for a guitarist is to use the instrument as a way to communicate. So it's like you could strip the vocals from a song, and with the guitar, it's somehow you can speak something through the guitar as an actual language. And it's again, just like you with the phone calls with him that were amazing. The equivalent is me doing, 2.5 hour deep dive interview. Is you get all this crazy stuff that's up in that brain that makes you rethink everything you do as a guitarist.
I'm curious to know what's that song you're talking about.
So it's the I think it's Turn the Lights On. So it comes back from the chorus, and it's if I'm sleeping like a log, wake me up and I'll be your dog. And then he like barks, and then there's like wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, okay.
And it sounds like he's like retuning the guitar on the low notes. And I'm like, were you retuning the guitar? He's like, I don't know, man. I picked up a broken guitar and I did it in one take. So like he doesn't even know how he did it. It's wild. So anyway, so for our listeners so we have some listeners that come in for a certain guest. So they go, oh, Ricky Paquette, oh, the Sheepdogs, and they come in and they check this out as an existing fan. Then we have a loyal fan base that tunes in every episode regardless of guests. So for those listeners that are here for the podcast, if they haven't heard your album yet, how would you describe the music? We're going to send them all to go listen to it after this. But for now, how would you describe it? You mentioned going back to the roots, and there's some Southern rock and a little country. How do you describe it?
Well, I describe it like it's hard to describe in like a very short phrase. But now that we have a bit of time, we could talk about it in depth. It's like, I feel like it's a very, very amazing snapshot of where I'm at my age. When I did the album, I was 30. So some of that is there. Some of all my baggage from like having started very young, doing some blues stuff, doing some pop stuff, rock stuff. It's all in there, and I feel like it's Ricky Paquette at his best as an artist. It's not necessarily a guitar album. And that was one of the things I talked about with Gordy. It's like I'd done more like the sideman thing for a while as a bit of a guitar hero kind of thing, and I didn't want an album that was like that. I wanted to have songs on there. So that is also important for people that that know me as a guitar player. If they're going to go and hear my album, they're not going to hear me blowing solos all over the place. They're going to get to know me more as a singer. Also, there's some guitars on there, obviously, but the angle was more to have songs to put together a show. It's got pretty much all my influences in there. I feel like we did a pretty good job to really get the raw essence of the real Ricky Paquette. Over the years, I've done some different stuff, and I've even had a little point there where I did an album under the name Ricky Laurent, which was a completely different world for me. I feel like it definitely has like a lot of Aerosmith influences. Some people might get that, some people might not get that. I'm a huge Aerosmith fan. It's got some 12-string guitars, acoustics, which I really like to put acoustic instruments on rock songs, which I hadn't really had the chance to do all that much before, because I don't know why. I was always a fan of 12-string guitars, and no one that I was playing with was really into that. So I was like, you know what? I gotta have them 12 strings on my album, because
Gordy's really into that, right? He's got the famous double neck guitar, and one of them's a 12-string.
I didn't, and for some reason, I didn't think about it that way. But yeah, so when I told him that, he's like, "Yep, 12-string guitars it is." So there's a lot of influences from the outlaw country thing came into play at one point too, especially on the song Sparks. There's also some of my I like kind of humor, like weird, like Frank Zappa songs and stuff, and you can also find that on there. So it's a pretty wide variety of like sounds and influences on there that all kind of fit together as a one kind of album. I feel like it's an album that you need to get into to really get the whole picture, just because some albums have like one or two singles, and you can totally tell they're singles. They have a specific thing to them, and then the rest of the songs are like more, if you want to get to know the band a little more, you go into those. But I feel like this album is like you put it on and you listen to the entire thing. It's hard to kind of dismantle this album. I feel like it's, and then again, that's another thing. As growing up, I didn't like compilations. I didn't like greatest hits. I like to get an album and listen to it. And I just, in the last couple of years got back into records, like vinyl records. And strangely enough, I didn't realize it, but it's the reason why I probably like records so much is because you're not like going through a playlist and you're not on shuffle. You have to, I mean, yeah, you can skip tunes and stuff, but you're more likely to just put it on and press play and do something and have it kind of like you're just kind of bathing into the album, right? And so that's something I think this album kind of does well, in my opinion. Um,
And it's 9 songs, right? 9?
it's 9 songs.
So I
It's a
find it's
pretty,
like the perfect length where for me, 9, 10, 11, maybe 12 songs is the perfect amount. I find when artists have like 17 songs, there's usually a little filler. Like if they cut 3, 4, 5 songs, they'd have more of like a greatest hits, just an amazing 10-song album. So I found that
yep.
9 songs is perfect.
Yeah, and it's a very high energy album. So I think 9 songs is like bang, 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 bang. And if I was to put more songs in there, I would have probably had to kind of maybe not tone it down, but I feel like when the album ends, it's like you had wind in your hair, you were riding down the highway kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is something we wanted to do. And I think Gordy really, really hit it on the nail. Like, I mean, I speak very highly of him, and I respect him so much. And I mean, he really changed the way I think about music too. And I think you could totally hear it on the album. And I will never really be the same after this album, just because I was what since like think about it, being alone in my studio for a couple of months, not even with the producer, not even with any other musicians, and having the chance to spend like 4 months by myself creating music. Like, I'm probably never gonna live that ever again. I'm gonna be doing some music with other people in the studio. We're gonna have a smaller amount of time, maybe press for time, or have other people more involved into the process. This was just like, I think it was pure. It was very pure, and I think that was a great gift that life gave me. And you were talking about that. It's like uh, just making an album like this. One guy in Texas and one guy in Quebec was like, I didn't even know if that was going to be possible, but I feel like we connected in a very strong way, and it shows on the album. Like on the album, I sing, I play guitar and do backups. I play some harmonica. And then Gordy plays bass and plays drums. He has part of his family doing backups on some tunes. I had some friends do some backups on a couple of tunes. Caught Rockin' Hard in the Place, where there's a big party kind of back vocal
Is
thing
that you
happening.
playing harmonica on that song?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
because
and
there's like
that's
an
me.
awesome harmonica part, and I'm like, who's playing that? Because I didn't know you
That's
played harmonica.
Oh well, I really didn't, but I decided I was going to play harmonica on that one because I was like in that headspace where I was again alone in my basement, and I was just,
Yeah,
let's go for it.
nobody's
I
there
went,
to judge you,
I,
right?
I was Well, because we had talked about certain things and how the song like had a party vibe, and we talked about like the Stones and Aerosmith and the Faces and the whole thing, and I really like harmonica. Uh, and then we talked about, I think Gordy had put harmonica before this on Just Along for the Ride, which was one of the singles. So I kind of felt like, okay, well, if this is going to be part of the single, then it needs to be part of what I do. I like harmonica. I kind of dabbled around with harmonica, like basically any musician would have, maybe like I kind of knew a little bit. So I went to the store and I had told Gordy, well, yeah, I'll put some harmonica on there. I don't think he even knows this to this day. And I came back and I just practiced and I tried a bunch of stuff and I found a couple of licks that I really like and I just recorded and I sent it to him and he's like, yeah, that's it. So it was really funny. And then I had to kind of like learn the parts for the live shows and stuff. So I don't really play harmonica, but I decided I was going to play it on that song, which was really fun to have that freedom to do that on the album. But all this to say that there's not a lot of people that play on the album. The only other musician that plays on the album is Anders Drerup, another Ottawa guy who now lives in Austin, and he plays keys on several songs, and he's a guitar player and a singer. And I only got to know he was from Ottawa once I came down to Texas, and we got in. Gordy introduced us, and like we have a couple of friends in common in Canada, which was kind of like it's a full blown Canadian album influenced by a whole bunch of Southern rock and rollers. It's
Where
like,
where where do the drums come from?
well, played by no other person than Gordy Johnson himself.
Man, that guy can just play everything. It's when we're like, I know him as an incredible guitarist, and then when I
Yeah.
got to know him, it turns out that he basically cut his teeth as like the best bass player. Like he it was all bass until he was older, and then he goes, well, I'll switch to guitar, and he's known as one of the great guitarists. So it's, all these instruments you don't know that he plays, and he's actually
Oh
world
man.
class at all of them. So
I know I've seen him play here in Austin and some of the local gigs and stuff he does sometimes. And I didn't know he was like a bass player before a guitar player either. And I was like, I like his guitar playing, but people gotta hear him play bass. He's a hell of a bass player. Like, yeah, well, I guess he does what he does on guitar, he does on bass. He moves air. Like you can feel it. It's not just bass notes or like bass lines. It's like that's what I appreciate about this guy. It's like he moves things, you know. And anyhow, so he played bass, played some guitars also on there, and also played the drums, which was very, very cool. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And he really had a particular snare sound that I really liked. Uh, being from like from around here, I think he told me that some of the drums recorded for Big Sugar also had a snare drum that was used on some of the ZZ Top stuff. So the wide open snare sounds and stuff. So was I got to know him as different kinds of instrumentalist, and that was really cool. Yeah.
I have two questions that come up from that. So one is about a snare. So on the song Be Who You Be, so there's
Yeah.
cowbell, which is awesome, but I find there's a different snare sound on that song than any song on the album. Is that one of the crazy snares you're talking about? It's like really snappy. It sounds like a lot of room. It sounds like there's the snare and the
Yeah.
mic is not right on it. It sounds like the mic is like a big room mic. Does that make any
Um,
sense?
yeah, it makes total sense. I'd have to ask Gordy what snare that was. I think it's just a matter of tuning and just the way he played it. And the cowbell was just
You
came
need
out of the
cowbell
blue.
somewhere on the album. I
Well, it's
mean,
a
come
rock
on.
album, at one point it's like you either go for it or you don't. And I think it's like we went for it. For
Yeah,
sure.
the song "Drinking Beer and Driving Around," is Gordy doing spoken word on that? Is that him?
Yes. Oh, that's a good story, as a matter of fact. Initial
Story time with Ricky Paquette.
Oh
Let's go.
man. We spent a lot of hours talking via FaceTime doing some writing. And we were writing some riff. Uh and we had the music for it. And then I can't remember some of the other titles, but we tried different things, and it was not a spoken kind of storytelling kind of song at all. And then we just weren't really happy with what the lyrical content had, where that was going. It's like, this doesn't feel exactly right. So one night he played the instrumental for his family, and he asked his wife and his daughter. I can't remember who answered, but he told me about this the next day. So he said, so I played the instrumental for the family, and I asked them what they kind of thought this sounded like and what the song should talk about. And what came to what came to mind was drinking beer and driving around. I said, drinking beer and driving around. That's crazy. So we started talking. It was kind of late, and I was having a couple of drinks, rum and cokes in the basement, and started talking about like stories. And so I had this. I don't know what came to mind. I told him about this weird story when I was living on a farm, and my friend was over, and I had just moved out there, and I had a Kubota, and we went. I can't remember how I ended up telling him this whole entire story, but we winded up that specific time taking the Kubota to the corner store to get some beer, and we were just driving down the street with this Kubota and stuff. So he thought that was so funny. And he had just told me about drinking beer and driving around, which is probably the reason why I told him about this story in the first place. But the song was not there yet. So he only had kind of title, and he asked me, what do you think about this? So I told him the story. We did some other stuff, and the next day he sent me drinking beer and driving around with him singing on it like that. And if you listen to the song, it's like, why would I want to change the way that song sounds? Like, I can't really sing that like that. And it's a funny story. It's got a bit of a Frank Zappa thing to it. And then we just decided, well, maybe this should be a duet. And we kind of like left it kind of like that for a while, not really being sure of what was going to happen with it. It might have we thought about having other different guests do it, and then we figured, why have a different guest? Gordy's the guest on there. So sang some stuff like on the bridge and the choruses, and did some solos. And so that whole story is 90% true. But anyhow, that's the old days.
You,
I was young and wild.
now you're you're a responsible adult, you know. There you
Yeah.
go. Somewhat.
Well, yeah, somewhat. I mean, I wasn't. Yeah, it was a Kubota. It wasn't a car.
Yeah, all good. So
I was
so
living on a farm, you know.
there you go. So earlier you mentioned that you didn't want this to just be a guitar album where it's just crazy guitar solos everywhere. You wanted to showcase yourself as a singer, as a songwriter, as well as a guitarist. So despite you saying that, there's still a bunch of amazing guitar work on here. I mean, just the sound of the guitar playing, how unique stuff is. There's still guitar solos. There's a bunch of cool stuff. So my question is, there's a specific guitar sound on songs like Sparks, on Leave It All Up to You, where there's like a guitar riff or a guitar solo, and then you do your own harmonies of the main riff. And that's the sound that you get with the signature sound of like Thin Lizzy, with the Sheepdogs. That's part of their sound
Yeah,
too, is like the
definitely. Yeah.
layered guitars. For someone that's not a guitarist, how do you get that sound? You come up with just the main riff first, and then you come back over it with a second guitar and do a harmony of it, and then with a third guitar and do a harmony of the other two. How do you stack that? How do you build that?
Well, the funny thing is, for me, it's a super hard thing to do the same thing twice. So here's how it kind of went for me. I mean, I'm sure other bands that have the harmonies do it maybe differently. I'm not. Everyone's got their own way of doing it, but um, for me, it's like I do one solo. I do several solos, as a matter of fact, and until I kind of find the right one. I don't really write solos. I kind of do many solos, and then I pick one that really kind of. There's always going to be one or two that have that thing where I go, oh, that's a melodic thing. I was not expecting that, or something's you repeat a part in the solo and it becomes more of a hook. You look for things that you like. That's how I like to create solos anyways. I don't really like to sit down and write a melody. That's just me. So once that is done, um it's kind of strange, but I have to kind of learn it. And it's pretty hard for me to learn it because I don't like doing the same thing twice. I hear it. I know what it is. So I kind of learn it, and then I try and harmonize it. But then again, I don't really think about like, oh, let me harmonize this solo with a third or a fifth, like some other bands might do, or some other bands that do have two guitar players that have played together for a long time. They all know, okay, well, if you're doing that note, then I'll always be up a third, or I'll always be down a fifth or something. They have their own way. That's what creates the sound. For me, if you listen to those solos, they're not perfectly harmonized. And it's kind of intentionally done that way just because it happened on one song and then Gordy really liked it. And I thought, oh man, I really like this too. So let's keep going. So I harmonized it in a weird way. And then it dawned on me, it was like, there's a lot of guitar solos that are harmonized that I don't really think people think of harmonized solos. Like some of my influences, we talked about that with Gordy, as a matter of fact, that, digging back to my roots, I remembered hearing Cream and Derek and the Dominoes and even Black Sabbath. Sometimes they would just like record 2 or 3 solos and have them playing at the same time, and it would create this kind of whole psychedelic thing. So I kind of let myself go into that kind of world with a bit more structure, just because I felt like it basically. But those harmonies are I've had to I've had to like relearn them to show them to the other guitar player who plays with me in the live band, just because they're so unexpected kind of thing. But I don't really know if I'd be able to redo that again. Like, I mean, I wish I mean, that's the cool part about creating the way we did this album, was like, we weren't really thinking all that much. We were just kind of going for it. And when we felt something, it was like, oh, that's it. So it's hard to say how that really happened, other than just how I just explained it. It kind of just happened. You let the floodgates open, you play. I like to improvise. That's how I do it live too. I mean, I rarely play the same solo twice. I mean, there's some parts that I know are hooks I'll throw in there because people are expecting a certain part. The parts you think the people are going to air guitar to, you want to keep. And then in between those things, you kind of it needs to bubble up and have a little bit of sparkle and a little bit of living organisms throughout the whole thing. That's always been my thing for forever, really. Like, that's all the guys I really enjoy have that kind of thing where even if they do the same thing twice, it's so in them that they kind of attack it differently and stuff. So that's the main reason why I like live music so much, is that it's not the same. It's not a recorded piece of music. I mean, I do appreciate a masterpiece that's recorded, that you press play, and you're always in awe. But live music is something amazing for me for that. And what I really like about the album Sparks is that I feel like we were able to capture that live essence. Like I said earlier about not being perfect in its own way, I think it's perfect for what it is. But it was a moment. There's an energy we captured. It wasn't like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I like improvising for that reason. And we permitted ourselves to do a lot of that on the album.
Isn't it amazing that in most professions, if you stop thinking while working, you'll probably get in trouble. And as a musician, when you stop thinking, you're probably going to produce your best work.
I don't think there's any way other than any best way to say it. Like, if I think about it, yeah, you're right. If I start thinking while I'm playing, I'm in deep trouble. Even to this day, like, I mean, obviously, playing live with playing songs that people know, you want to kind of have those parts that people recognize. But I so don't like the feeling of like having to go back into my brain to go get those riffs and those melodies. So it needs to be muscle memory, and then after that it's just emotion, and it's like living the moment basically. Because yeah, I don't like playing with my brain.
So
that's really good. I never thought about it that way though. That's pretty good.
So you're a busy man. You don't have time to just lie around and play video games like the rest of us nerds at home playing video games. But I have one video game question I have to ask. If the video game Guitar Hero came to you and said, "Hey, we've listened to your album Sparks. We would like you to submit one of the 9 songs to be in the next Guitar Hero video game so that people can play along to it." Which of the 9 songs do you provide to Guitar Hero?
Oh man. There's probably two that come to mind. Um, One of them would be Who You Be, just because I feel like that's a Guitar Hero kind of song, and it's got that kind of Guitar Hero guitar sound too. It's got a bit more of like late 70s like Guitar Hero hand up in the air arena rock thing. And for me, Guitar Heroes the game, you need that kind of like riffing, and you need a good solo. Um then there'd probably be Sacrifice Fly, just because, but it'd be in a weird way more of a beginner not a beginner kind of game for that one, but it just feels like it's got a riff, like a pretty standard riff, and the solo in Sacrifice Fly is more like a singing. You could sing along to that melody a little bit like you would be able to sing along to like the solo to Jumping Jack Flash from the Stones or something. So I feel like that's also part of what I think those would be the two, yeah, and for different reasons.
Perfect. So we started this interview with a memorable quote from Gordie Johnson. I have another memorable quote here from another rock star. This is from
Oh
Jeff
man.
Jeff Burrows, the drummer for the Tea Party.
Oh
And
man.
and he has something to say about your guitar playing. So he says, Ricky is the type of guitar player who doesn't need to hype himself. His fingers do the talking and sends the posers walking. So I don't know how these guys come up with these catchphrases, but they're providing
Oh
like the
man.
best quotes of the year here, you know?
Oh my God. I have to say I'm almost embarrassed. Oh man. Yeah, well, Jeff Burrows and I went to Afghanistan together while he was playing with Crash Karma, and we hit it off. It was great. We jammed on the plane going there and stuff. That's amazing, man. Man, I haven't reached out to Jeff in years. I probably should.
You have an excuse now, which is
Now, and I
awesome.
have an excuse. That's pretty funny. But man, I don't know what to say to this, man. It's like I don't really like to think about these things too much. They're pretty distracting.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to just accept the compliments and the praise, you know. It's we work hard at our craft and we do our best, and they say music is its own reward. It's like you don't need the awards, you don't need the hype, you don't need all these things, but sometimes you receive them and you just don't know what to do with it, you know?
I don't get me wrong. I totally appreciate these lines for sure. It's man. I mean these people are people I look up to. I mean, ever since I was a kid. Again, Jeff Burrows from the Tea Party. Man, I love the Tea Party. I mean, growing up again on listening to they were on the same station. And it's the same kind of era too. So I consider myself very lucky to have crossed paths with these guys, and I mean, hopefully that won't these times won't, there won't be just in the past. There'll be some more in the future, and I'm pretty sure there will be. But it's quite something, like being inspired and then meeting these guys. It's like I I now figure I'm at an age right now where, in a weird way, I'm at the age that those people were when they were inspiring me, which has not happened. It's been happening in the last few months, as a matter of fact, seeing how influential I could be to kids that come and see the concerts. And I now have a daughter. She's 19 months old, and my little nieces and stuff. So it's kind of, I'm just slowly kind of pivoting to that part of my life where, I gotta find meaning into things, and I never had to think about it all that much. I just kind of cruised along and had great things happen, and I think the reason why those things happen is because I don't think about it all that much. I just do it out of passion, and I do it with my whole heart. And I mean, I know it sounds kind of corny, but it's true. Like, I don't really think about those things. I truly do things out of passion 100% of the times, or maybe 99, because sometimes you have to, you have to do things that you have to do. But I feel like there's been a lot of compromise in certain parts of my life where I feel like I should have been there more for whatever reason, because that's what people do. But somehow inside of me, I just feel like I need to kind of like plow through and just keep going and moving straight forward. And It's it's that's probably why these things happen. Not thinking, just doing shit, from the bottom of my heart and being so passionate. I think that's what people like Gordy and Jeff Burrows saw in me when they saw me. I mean, there's tons of great musicians out there. Why would they say something like that about me? It's not because I'm the greatest singer or guitar player ever. I mean, I'm grateful that they say these things, but I think what they see is something that's not always there. And I look for that even when I look for new music out there, things that you can't see through. It's like you just watch it or you hear it and you go, oh, this person is singing because they need it, or they're just not thinking about it. They're doing it because they're feeling it, and there's no other ulterior motives. It's like it's inside of them. It's their calling. They need to do this, and I think it's something that a lot more people should be doing, and it's the reason why I probably am able to stay this happy all my life. Also, it's a hard thing to do though, but it's totally worth it. It's been a hell of a ride so far, so I ain't about to stop.
Do you think having the realization that you did, that you're now at the age that the people that inspired you as a kid, that's the age they were at when they inspired you. Do you think having that realization helps you now, where you're having all this success, you're on the road with the Sheepdogs, playing these great shows to big audiences? Do you think that helps you to stay humble and to really be a good influence on the fans and on the crowd? Like if someone wants a picture or an autograph, you can put yourself back in the place of being them, being at the Tea Party show, and maybe being a fan. Does that keep you kind of grounded and humble and ready to put yourself out there for the fans, maybe a step above what other people would do?
100%. 100%. Just because it's a different perspective now. I think about the influence I could have on some people, and it's like I've had some bad experiences also on being on the other side of the fence, where I wanted to reach out to some people and you couldn't, or they were being uh not nice. I'm going to use that term. uh and it's like I don't want to be that person to anybody. I mean, I know it's kind of like an I don't want to sound like a hippie that just says it's just everything's nice and it's beautiful, but to be honest, I think life is beautiful, and I think everybody should be nice to one another, and there's no real reason to be an asshole, really. I mean, I do what I do. I mean, doctors operate on people, and they save lives. I play guitar and I maybe save lives in my own way, but I'm no better or worse. I mean, some people have a gift, some people have a gift they haven't found, some people need to find themselves, and it's like I always try, even when people are not nice, to have that perspective on the matter, where you go, I could be an asshole too and like fire back, but what would that really give? Maybe that person is going through a rough patch, maybe there's a reason why they're living. So I try and approach things in that way, and it's served me well so far, and I think if a lot more people would do that, it would be of great help. And I try and do that with my music. There's some people that reach out on my Instagram or Facebook, and I don't really have time to answer to everything, but when I see it, I at least try and give them some kind of feedback. I think people need that proximity, especially after what we've just been through. They need to feel like they're part of something, and it's crazy how much you can change a person's day or a person's week, or by just saying one little thumbs up, or I mean, I've had some people come kind of write back to me, just because I mean, this is maybe off subject, but just a thumbs up. At one point, somebody wrote back and said something about, yeah, you don't answer your emails anymore, you're too popular or whatever, and I was like, I took the time to write back and said, I'm sorry if you feel this way, but I actually do answer as much as I can. I just have a busy schedule, and appreciate you, being a fan and all that stuff. But you should think about the other side of the story before you fire back at people like that. And they wrote me back a long email saying, you're right. I had no idea about, what it is I was doing. Like, there was no real motive. There was no real reason why I would do that. So it's funny how influential people are to one another. And I try and always keep that in the back of my mind. And that's definitely made me a better person all around, all the time. It's pretty hard to keep that going all the time because we get tired and we don't have time to deal with everything. But that little extra mile that you could go and maybe be that person. You might not know it right now, but I think in the end, when you look back at your life, you're definitely it's all worth it for sure.
So people look at you now and they see this successful musician, this talented guitarist and singer and songwriter, producer, all those things. I like to go all the way back to the beginning just to show that you weren't born this way. I mean, you found your interests, you put in the time and dedication, you developed your craft, you worked on your instruments. It took like a lifetime of developing this mastery, and I like to show that journey. So let's go back to the beginning, and we'll work our way up to currently what's going on with the Sheepdogs. So
absolutely,
where does this love of music come from? Is there an earliest musical memory that comes back to you? Maybe a time where music first stood out as being important.
Yeah. Well, if we go back, way back, I mean, like I said, my dad and my mom and the whole family, they're really into music. No one's really a musician. My sister sings. There's people that play a bit of music in the family just for fun, at parties and stuff. But there's no one in the family that's actually necessarily a professional musician. So that doesn't like my parents didn't make me play music. What happened is that I was just kind of soaked into the classic rock in my dad's garage, messing around with tools, right, while he was working on motorcycles, or at parties with my mom's family and stuff, where they'd play the outlaw country stuff, and eventually kind of sunk into me. And one day I was playing. I used to play sports, and one time there was this guy, Denis Croteau. I'll always remember. He was a good friend with my dad, and his son was a good friend of mine, and we played baseball together. And he came over one evening and brought his guitar and played for my parents while other kids were in the backyard, and I was just kind of like hypnotized by the guitar and him singing. So I sat beside him like this, like in my memory, anyways. I was like maybe 2 or 3 feet away the whole evening, and I got so into it. And I was like, wow, he played like tragically hip stuff. And anyways, one thing led to the next. The next morning, people were laughing and saying, "Well, you were just there, like hanging out while your friends were all running around. You really?" I said, "Yeah, I'd really like to learn to play the guitar." And it came out of the blue. So my parents and everybody was kind of like laughing, and then I said, "Well, if you're serious about it, we'll put you into some guitar lessons and see how that goes." So my dad knew somebody who had a guitar lying around, a really weird guitar, like a tiger stripe guitar. So that he somehow got that guitar to my hands. I had no idea what to do with it, so I just kind of strummed the strings. And we went to another party a couple of weeks later, and Denis' band was also playing. And the funny part, this is a parallel here. His band was called the Backyard Dogs.
Oh wow!
So dog band number one. There's now I've now been in 3 different dog bands. Anyways, I'll tell you that later. But so I just stood there with the guitar and just strummed the guitar. I broke every single string on the guitar. So that's how it started. And then I got into guitar lessons in like the beginning of September. And by the time December came around, I did my first concert. I can't remember what I played, but it was something like a beginner would play, like Green Sleeves or something. And my guitar teacher was like telling my parents how much he thought I had something going on, because I was very, very, very passionate about it. And he would I'd come up to him and say, I want to learn, like, I'll always remember the first one I wanted to learn was, I think was Wanted Dead or Alive from Bon Jovi. And he had kind of like wrote down some tabs, and I was like, it was a very like beginner way to kind of play it. And I came back next week and was like, so this is what you showed me, but it doesn't sound like it at all. And then he looked at me and said, oh no, okay, well, obviously I didn't have the skill set to truly play it, but that's when he understood that I kind of knew what I was going for, which was more than he was seeing from other students. So that's the way it all started.
How old were you at that point where your friend
Uh,
played and then you got a guitar the
that
next day?
I was 9 years old.
Mm.
9 years old, and then I kept playing, and then my dad promised me that if I was like really into it, because I wanted to play electric guitar, so he promised me that if I kept going at it, he'd get me an electric guitar. So I got an electric guitar for Christmas, and then I kept playing and playing and playing, and then I got into gear really earlier on. So for some reason, I really like pedals and amps and stuff. So we hung around the music store and met some different musicians that were my age, other kids. So I started my first band. I was 11 years old. The band was called Simply Wow, and had some local kids in there. We played all around town. They had Anthony DeMillo on drums and Alyssa Mahoney on vocals. I wasn't singing back then, and Lou DeMillo was playing bass, which was the Anthony's father. We had this band, and he got us up to play between sets at his gigs. So we were playing the Ottawa scene quite a bit. And then he was good friends with Les Emerson, who passed away recently. Man, that was a big shock to me. But it seems like there's a lot of them passing, dying. But he was a big one because he was a very big supporter of the local scene, and he really liked us as a young band. He got us to play in his local gigs between sets also, and then started going out at jams, blues jams, and that's how I kind of got somewhat discovered for my first record deal at 13. I was playing with Paul Delorier at the Rainbow Bistro in Ottawa, and
In the
his bass
market.
on the market, yes. Sunday blues jams were something that my dad used to take me to and quite a bit, and I was going up and just played some Stevie Ray and played some stuff, and it was great. This one time, Paul Delorier invited me up to play with him, and his bass player at the time couldn't make it. I can't remember who was playing bass with him at that time, but at that specific gig, he had another guy called Dominic Romanelli, and he had a label, Preservation Music, from Montreal, and they had different jazz and blues artists. If anyone's familiar with like Don Tyler Watson and Angel Forrest and Jonas Tomalty from Jonas and the Massive Attraction. At that point, he had a band called Jonas and the Blues Blooded. So they were about to kind of like shut. It was like a very small label, but they were about to shut down. And Dominic saw me play, and he went back and talked with the label guys and said, "We got to do one last project. I think I have something." So he got my number from Paul. And one night, I always remember I was sitting having dinner and got the phone call. My dad answered, and then this guy was on the other line, said, is this Jerry Paquette? Yes, we'd like to speak to you about your son. We're really interested in maybe doing some projects with him, like a record deal. And they had the whole conversation. My dad kept saying, "Who is this? Come on, stop pulling my leg." He thought one of his friends was just pulling a prank on him. Turns out it wasn't a prank at all. So that's how that whole thing started. We drove down to Montreal, went and met them, started playing music, and kind of did some covers. And that's my first album came out a year and a half later.
So you're like
Had to
14-ish?
I came out, I was 14. And obviously I just kind of started singing. It was pretty crazy. Had three original songs on the album, which was a pretty big undertaking for a 13-year-old kid to kind of, but it was very important for me to start doing that. And I thank them a lot for having kind of pushed me for my singing and for writing also. And man, when we released that album, I did a whole bunch of TV shows, and it all kind of went pretty fast. We did like a ton of shows all around the province, and did like the Mont Tremblant Blues Fest and the Jazz Festival in Montreal, and all those things kind of led to me being on TV shows and just playing with playing guitar and having a great time. Again, not really thinking about it. I was just enjoying. I was like, man, I love this. I love playing guitar. But it was never like I love this being on the screen or I love this being on a stage. Here was this 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid just really passionate about guitar and music, and that kind of led me to doing a couple like really interesting opening acts for like CCR and Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush in Omaha, Nebraska. I'll always remember that. I was 16 and I got my first pair of snakeskin boots for that specific show, and a whole bunch of other things. And did a live album at the Montreal Jazz Fest, and that was kind of like tipping point. We did that, then we kept playing, but I was kind of like felt a little stuck at that point. I started thinking, so I was like, I've been doing this thing for a very long time, and I feel like, yeah, I love the blues. I also love classic rock, but now I'm kind of pinned down into this blues thing, and I don't think it's like it represents who I am entirely. It's part of who I am. I love it. That's how I started playing guitar. Obviously, just improvising, and I was kind of like showed how to jam and stuff. So obviously, it was a big part of who I was. But like, I need to explore some more. So that's how I got to play with different artists and stuff. Started writing and started exploring different things. So I kind of let my solo project go for a little while, and did a whole bunch of recording and writing and touring with other artists like Angel Forest. I did many years with her. I did Martin Deschamps, which is a French Quebec rocker. That's he was basically my mentor for a while. He's such a cool guy, man. Great singer and stuff. So I mean, I don't know. It's a pretty long story. I mean, it's kind of strange. I'm talking about it right now, and all these memories are flooding back into my head, and it's come to mind. I was like, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, which is crazy because I don't.
When you're not that old to start with,
I'm thinking
being a
about it now,
20-year
and
veteran is it's crazy.
it's like it's pretty crazy. It's like like I said, I don't like to think about those things too much. I like to move forward and always keep learning and always kind of move forward. So it's like you're making me go down memory lane quite a bit
Down
here.
memory lane. Yes. So you had mentioned that when you were young, you were playing these shows already in Ottawa, Rainbow Bistro. I was able to get a quote here from someone that used to watch you back when you were in your teens playing these young shows. So this is from Steve St. Jean, who's the stage and tour manager for the Cooper brothers. He also refers to himself as their spiritual advisor some days. So this is what Steve has to say. I heard about this young kid who is frequently playing Tucson's in Ottawa. I finally saw him at Blues Fest, and it was love at first sight. I heard him sound check, and I told him, we need you here. Blow the roof right off this place. And that's just what he did. So I guess you were going on before the Cooper brothers. So, or after, I don't know, but he needed your help to rile up the crowd.
I was playing as a guest on their Southern Rock Review show last year. And yeah, I'll always remember him coming to me and saying that to me. I was like, oh man, I better bring it tonight because this guy is like, he's pretty gung-ho about this whole thing. I better not, let him down. Yeah, well, those were great times. I was talking about playing in between sets in a couple of bars around town. Tucson's was one of them that I was playing all the time. And even like I saw so many great shows there. I got to see Mick Taylor when he played with my Strat I had at the time when he was like in between two shows between Toronto and Montreal. I think it was a jam-packed show. That Tucson's was a big thing for me growing up, and I got to play there quite a bit. Oh man, great times.
Yeah, so
I wouldn't change a thing if I had to like relive my my youth. And I got to thank my parents quite a bit for that because, like I said, I never really thought about it all that much. And now that I'm a parent, I'm like, wow, man, they really put in a lot of energy and time and investment into just supporting me. Basically, they never really kind of told me what to do. They were just, I guess, they were just happy I was staying out of trouble in a way. And so, and it was also fun. My parents loved music, so they were just like basically hanging out in places where my dad could have some beers, and it was a great. The bands were playing. It was basically like hanging out with their kid and hanging out with some friends and just being able to invite a whole bunch of people. It was like a great time, really. Like it's great memories for sure.
So what's funny about the connection with Steve is I was in Mississauga for 11 years and I moved back to Ottawa a year and a half ago, and I'm a goalie in hockey, so I get calls to play for all these teams. It's like a bass player. There's not enough bass players in music, so not enough goalies in hockey.
Yeah.
And I get called to play for this team, and that's how I met Steve. So I play goalie for Steve's team, and knowing that he works with the Cooper brothers, so he's deep in the music industry, and in my background, even before the podcast, is all in the music industry. So
Yeah.
him and I talk all the time, and I say, "Oh, I have Papa Roach coming up, and I have Stain coming up, and I have all these bands." And when I said Gordie Johnson, he was loving it. And then when I mentioned, I said, "Oh, I have Ricky Paquette coming on from the Sheepdogs." He's like, "Ricky, I know Ricky," and he told me the whole story that I just shared. And
Yeah.
when he was talking about how he knows you and he had seen you and all that stuff, a bunch of the other hockey players, because they're friends with Steve and they go to the Cooper brothers shows and they go to stuff together, like the whole dressing room's like, "Oh, we know Ricky. We used to see Ricky at Tucson's," and like, "Oh, my wife was like obsessed with
Yeah.
him," and like all these different things. So it's funny. My hockey team, out of all the people I've interviewed, the best reception I got from my hockey team was when I said that I was having you on the show. So
Oh, that's great.
you're Ottawa old timers hockey famous, just so you know.
Oh man, there you go.
That's the
That's a good boy
ultimate
too.
credibility right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you strive for. So I have a quote for you, and we're gonna dive into the Sheepdogs. We have
Oh yeah.
about a half hour left or so. So you grew up in Gatineau. I'm saying it like it's supposed to be said, in Gatineau, Quebec, which is for those
We.
of us in Ottawa, you're just across the bridge to the other side. My sister
That's
actually
right.
lives just across the bridge. She's in La Pêche, Quebec, which is not far from Wakefield. And Wakefield has the Black Sheep Inn, where amazing music venue that world-class musicians play at. So I was able to track down someone that grew up with you in Gatineau, who was in the same music scene with all you little kids and teenagers, and she went on to incredible things. This is some kind words from Eva Avila, the Canadian
Oh
Idol
my
winner.
God. Yeah.
And she says, "Ricky is one of the most talented musicians I've ever met. We are from the same hometown, and we grew up together doing various talent shows and festivals. His parents are lovely as well. I wish him nothing but the best. He deserves it. Love you, Ricky. Fier de toi." So she threw in a little French for you there.
There you go, man. With the Kusa. Oh man, I haven't seen her in a long time. Yeah, well, those are kind words. I mean, I had a great. Thinking about it, I had a great time growing up, and I still, just enjoy life. And it's. Oh man, I remember some of those talent shows. Her father was also a good musician too. Yeah, great singer.
Yeah. So what I've seen is, so she
Um,
had all the success with Canadian Idol, but that's years. Like I was on season 5 of Canadian Idol, and that was like 15 years ago. So she was back
I,
on like season 3 or something. So it's forever ago. And I think recently, I'm a massive Pink Floyd fan. Like Pink Floyd's one of my favorite
that's. I was
bands.
gonna say. I was trying to reach into my brain. It's like, what did I
So
see
she's
of
on
her lately?
tour. She's on
That's
tour
right.
with the official like Pink Floyd cover band,
Right.
and like touring, I don't know, North America, like big tours. So that's what she's up to, doing some really
Oh,
cool stuff.
amazing. Well, another person I'm gonna have to reach out to. I haven't spoken to in a while. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so
Oh
let's
man,
let's dive into the Sheepdogs. So I'm excited.
let's do it.
The first thing is, so you joined the Sheepdogs in September of 2022. This is like 4, 5, 6 months ago, not that long ago. How does that opportunity present itself? Is it because of the success of the solo album? How does this come to be?
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the solo album. As a matter of fact, it all happened very quickly. Um, and I was making plans for the solo album, also just doing the whole summer thing. And then I was gonna spend some time in Austin for the winter. So I was kind of like getting ready to free up my calendar for the winter and even like the fall and the winter. So I was getting ready to do all that. And then one morning I got an email from Ryan saying, so it goes like this: Sheepdogs fall tour. And I'm going, oh, okay. Well, I'm on their fan list or whatever. I keep seeing them and like in my email or on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I like the band, right? So I was like, oh, they're announcing a tour. Open up the email and it says, "Hey Ricky," and like a lot of those kind of fan mails or whatever,
Auto
it starts
generates the
auto
name.
generated. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna keep reading here. And so we're going on a pretty extensive tour in the fall, blah blah blah, and we're in need of a guitar player. And someone suggested your name, and I'm reading this and I'm going, hang on a second here, that's not fan mail.
This is very personal for a fan
This is very yeah, this is
mailing
very
list.
so. So I keep reading and I read and it, like kind of got in a bit of a panic attack because I was like, oh man, there's a lot of dates and in a lot of places, and I have all this thing planned out. I had rented an Airbnb in Austin. My girlfriend, my baby were gone to do this whole thing. Now all of a sudden, this is one thing. I'm like, I love this band. They're going to be playing in every city. I wish I was going to be like visiting over the course of the next few months. I get to meet new people, and it's the Sheepdogs. You know what I mean? Like, there's one band that has like that whole old school rock and roll, southern rock harmonizing guitars that I like so much that are relevant today, that have new albums coming out and stuff. Is like, how the hell is this happening? So I kind of like took a few minutes to kind of come to realize that this was real, and then I was like, oh my god, definitely I want to do this, but how is this going to really happen? So I spoke with my girlfriend and I said, you're not going to believe this, and she looked at me and she said, what are you going to say? I said, well, I've already made up my mind. I'm going to say, yeah, I think I want to do this. Obviously, there's you know we got to work out certain things, certain details, but if you ask me if I want to do it, I want to do it. She said, yeah, I think so. She likes the band too. So then we spoke with you know so Ryan said if I was interested and I had time and if it's something I might consider, that he would like to talk on the phone. So I got on the phone with him, and so he explained the situation, that Jimmy was taking some time off. He was playing with Blue Rodeo, has his solo record coming out. Also, he has a studio that he's operating, and he doesn't think that he could be on the road for now and stuff. So like, okay. Said, but the first show is in like, I think he had said the first show was going to be like September 15th or something like that. And this, we're talking like maybe we're August 15th or something. So I'm like, oh boy, this is really, really short notice. And I also had a bunch of shows I was doing at that point. We're in the middle of August, it's like
Yeah.
festival season for the first time in 3 years. We're able to play shows. So I was super busy. I was also tearing down the studio I had built during the pandemic because I knew I was leaving. So he said,
And
well,
sorry,
when's the quickest?
before you continue, the Sheepdogs also have like a huge discography. So it's not like they have
Yeah.
one album to learn. They have like, I don't know, seven
Yeah.
or nine or something crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh my God, well, how am I going to make this happen? Because there's all these parameters I got to deal with. And he said, well, what's the quickest you can kind of come and jam with us and see if it all fits? Because obviously, he's asked, but he's never really seen me play, or we don't know each other. We not cross paths or anything. So it was like basically not a shot in the dark, because there's some people have put in nice recommendations for me and stuff on their side, so that was very beneficial, obviously. But it's a pretty big gig to just decide to go, oh, we'll get this guy. So they wanted to see if the vibe would fit, and we had to kind of feel it out and jam. Um, so he decided that the best way to do it was to get together in a rehearsal room and just go at it. So I don't know, a week later or something like that, I was in their jam space in Toronto. I left in the morning, flew to Toronto, He came pick me up at the airport. We had some food. We jammed during the afternoon. We talked, and then it went well. I had the chance to listen to some tunes I kind of like have heard on the radio, some tunes I'd been listening on in my car and stuff. So I kind of knew the repertoire, kind of, but not really. I never played the songs in my band or anything like that. Had never played Sheepdog songs, so I was just going off memory and going off feel and vibe and trying to fit in basically, because like I said earlier in the interview, I'm not a guitar player that likes to do the same thing twice, or that is, it's not an easy thing for me to learn something and do this exact specific thing. So for me it was like, well, if this has got to be the way it's got to be, then I'm going to have to be able to fit in being who I am. So I did that and was back at home sitting watching Netflix the same night with my girlfriend, and I was like, so how did it go? Well, I think it went well. I mean, it was fun. We hit it off. I think musically it can work, and it clicked. So a couple days later, he said, "Well, we'd be happy to have you on tour for the fall if that's if you want to jump on board with us. It'd be a lot of fun." We had talked about certain specifics and stuff, so uh, we kind of made it happen. And then he said, "Well, the first, can you make it to the first show, which would be September 1st?" Which initially was supposed to be in Sherbrooke, September 15th. Like, oh my God, okay, that's even closer now. So I had like even less time to make it happen. So we played around Toronto at Burning Kiln Winery. He said, it'll be a relaxed show. And it was a great show. It was a lot of fun. It was, after that show, I think that's where it kind of confirmed that it was going to work. Basically, I remember, being pretty confident, but looking at the set list and going, okay, that song, how's that go again? So I was like, nah, don't look at the set list. We'll go one song at a time. So that's how that went. And it went really well. I think the boys would say so as well. I mean, still there to this day, and we've become friends over the time. And but that, I think the most important factor was that we got along. And obviously musically, we had some of the same kind of background. And I'm saying this, and it's kind of funny because I'm still learning to get to know the guys, because we've just basically jumped on the tour bus and started from there. It's like it was a pretty big undertaking for me to like leave for months with people I didn't know, living on the tour bus. It's 10 guys on a tour bus for months, and it's like, if you're gonna get to know people, you're gonna have to know them pretty quickly on a tour bus like that. So that was a lot of fun. And oh, I forgot to mention one of the factors that kind of set me into that little panic attack when I got the email with the list of shows that Ryan sent. So I'm just going to give you a list of shows just so you kind of get a sense of what we're looking at here for the fall, and see if that fits into your schedule. So I go down, and it's all cool places and cool cities. And I was going to be in Austin November 1st. That's when I got the Airbnb. It was like, it had been booked in April. And I got to tell you, I was pretty surprised to see on the list the Austin show that the Sheepdogs had on the list was on November 1st.
You had your accommodations
So,
ready.
so for me, that was like a sign, obviously one of the many signs, but that was definitely one that made me go, oh my God, hang on a second. This.
It's impossible.
I
It's an
can't question
impossibility.
this. You know what I mean? I can't question what's happening in front of me. Like, there's no way no one could have planned it this way. This is just, so I kind of went for it. And from that point on, got to know the guys, and it's still to this day, like I said, like even we share music playlists, and we're on the bus where everybody's kind of playing tunes, and it's been a great adventure. Just to be able to be myself and play guitar and not think about too many things was just great. Just in having a great time. And I think that's part of the reason why it's worked so far, is I don't overthink it. And I also think that's the reason why the fans have been very, very welcoming. And I mean, Jimmy was a big part of the I don't really know the other two guitar players that were in the Sheepdogs before Jimmy. So I kind of got to know the Sheepdogs a little bit more once Jimmy was in the band for some reason. Having crossed paths with Jimmy as a kid in certain festivals and stuff, we're the same age. So I saw him joining the band. So I was always kind of intrigued as to how things would develop and stuff. And I've always liked his playing and whatnot. So having to kind of like replace Jimmy was, for me, it was like, it was a strange thing, but a very natural thing. We kind of had a bit of the same background. So I figured if it works with him and probably will work with me, but I didn't overthink it. And I think that's what people like when they see the Sheepdogs, is it's real, it's honest. And I would not be able to be any other way. I'm trying to keep it real and keep it honest with them. Also, I'm not going to try and be Jimmy, and I'm not going to try and be any of the other guitars like Leah or Rusty or anything like that. It wouldn't serve them any good, and it wouldn't serve me any good either as an artist. And we've had some great comments about that, how like it's not just trying to replace somebody, it's actually a new energy, it's a new thing, it's a new era. And obviously, the Jimmy era is going to be the Jimmy era. The other eras are going to be whatever they are. And now we're, I guess, in the Ricky era, and we'll see how that kind of develops and stuff. But it's been great so far. It's been a long tour. We've been around the UK, well, some UK dates, Canada. We've done a lot of shows in Canada, a lot of shows in the States. We're taking a little break. Well, we're having one more show in Ottawa on January 28th, and then we're taking a 2-month break. And then there's a couple of other shows that just popped up, like the Australian tour, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh.
We're also playing in New Orleans on April 1st, I believe. And then obviously, when summer comes around, there's always stuff that pops up, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot to kind of move around and play new music, and we'll see how that kind of develops. I feel very fortunate to have had this opportunity because I've had offers before to be a guitar player for certain cool things, but having this kind of opportunity where I can just be me in the music style that I really like, guitar harmonies, playing the Les Paul, cranked up amps, cool fans. It's basically all there, you know what I mean? And it's like, it feels like a natural thing for me, and hopefully it does for them too. I mean, it's a very new thing for me, so I'm not taking it for granted. You know what I mean? It's a fun thing that we get to talk about it. And I'm hoping we'll look back at this interview in years from now and say, you remember that? Yeah, it was great. It was like, it's just the beginning, man. It's great.
The beginning of the Ricky era. I like it's got a nice ring to it. The Ricky era. Did Ryan ever share with you who recommended you to the Sheepdogs? Because that's a big recommendation. Yes. That's life-changing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. He's their old guitar tech, Pooch.
That's a good nickname, Pooch.
Yeah. And he's a really cool guy. I met him in Toronto, and he saw me play, and we talked about Jimmy because he had told me at that point he used to work with the Sheepdogs. And I was like, oh yeah, well, so you got to know Jimmy then. And then we talked about guitars. I had an old guitar. We started talking. He was their guitar tech, so he's very intrigued. And he kind of had a problem with my amp, so we checked that out and we hit it off. He sent some pictures of like that old Firebird. I had an old 12-string Firebird that I really like. It's from '66. That's super rare. It's like a prototype that Gibson made in the '60s. So, our passion for gear kind of connected us. And then he saw what I did that night, and he actually mentioned that night saying, the way you interact with the band really reminds me of Jimmy's way of doing things. And I was like, I love Jimmy. So it's strange how things happen, but I felt like that conversation I was going to hear about this conversation again. You know what I mean? So, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but when you go, yeah, I met this guy, I've met different guitar techs before, and we've had talks about gear and guitars, but I feel like our connection was, I don't know how to explain it or what it meant or whatever, but I thought about that whole conversation more than once after that time. So in a weird way, it was like maybe somehow in the back of his mind, or he kind of knew this was going to happen. I'd have no idea how it, because this was like a year or months before. I can't remember exactly when I met him, but and obviously, you know, from playing with different artists over the years, I'm sure some other people have also kind of talked to the band about me. They must have done their. I've never really asked Ryan how it panned out more than what I know. Actually, it's a good question. It'd be pretty funny to ask him now, like as opposed to asking him when I first kind of saw him. You know, I might
And
ask him in a few weeks. I'll
now
for
you're
sure.
intrigued. Now you
No,
won't be able to
I'm
sleep at night. Yeah.
well, you know, it's like one of these things. Like how I don't like to question things all that much, but it is a pretty intriguing thing. It's like how does I guess yeah, I guess it's just meant to be, you know. Like I don't know. It's been a lot of fun though, and Ewan's a great guy. I mean, he's we've had a great time, kind of like you know, getting to understand our two guitar sounds and guitar conversations we have in the show. As if you've seen the Sheepdogs before, there's a lot of interaction between the two guitars. Um, it's it's also kind of funny because uh, I'm discovering a new side of my playing, which is very cool. Like I'm discovering a side of my playing that is more like Ewan would laugh at this because the first time I showed up with my main guitar, which was the Les Paul Jr. with one pickup, the P90. It's like a straight up rock machine, and I had no, and like they just brought an amp for me and it was like plugged right in, um, and he said, so yeah, it's kind of strange you brought that guitar. There's a lot of neck pickup. This is for guitar nerds, maybe more or less, but so I was like, yeah, I have a guitar with a neck pickup. I've never been a neck pickup kind of guy, you know. And so when the shows kind of came around, I had a guitar, I had a Les Paul Black Beauty with a neck pickup on it. So it's a whole different mindset to play with a neck pickup. I don't know why. It's never been my thing. And it's it's kind of pulling a different side of my playing out. You know, it's like almost a different language in a weird way. And also playing with you and then having to harmonize another guitar player as opposed to having another guitar player harmonize me is also a different dynamic. And yeah, we're from the same kind of like background of old school guitar players, and you know, from the Fleetwood Mac stuff to the Allman Brothers stuff and all that. But I think we have a different perspective on that same music, which is very cool, and I want to keep that going and keep that growing. It's I think it's going to become something interesting.
And you're
Yeah.
bringing more to the table than just the guitar. You're doing backups as well, I believe. Aren't you playing like mandolin or some other instruments?
No, for now I'm kind of I'm doing guitar and backups.
Okay.
Jimmy I think was doing pedal steel and mandolin and stuff. And I'd be interested in bringing some new stuff into the Sheepdogs for sure in my own way whenever the time comes. And that's one thing I'm looking forward, you know, having a chance to like create some stuff, whether it be an album or just even be in a room with the guys and just write. I think think it's something that will naturally probably happen in the nearer future than you know, and that's something I'm looking forward to, but I have no idea. Like, I mean, right now I just kind of embarked on this journey, not really knowing what was in it. And I'm just slowly discovering a new world and um, basically building a new world too. You know, it's not just kind of like go along for the ride. I also put in my own 2 cents and the guys have you know have been very welcoming to that too. I mean it's they've had a long career, so having a new guy in the band that they don't know is there's got to be also from their perspective something kind of special. You know, even for me, like going on tour with a bunch of guys I don't know is something. And I had my plans of going to Austin in my solo record, so it's two worlds colliding. But I feel like it's a beautiful kind of beautiful explosion of music that's about to happen, if I may put it that way, for sure. Maybe I'll put some harmonica. I don't know.
There you go. I knew you had something else that you were going to bring to the table here in due time. So that first jam, the first audition with the Sheepdogs, did they give you a list of songs you should focus on and learn, or maybe an album to focus on? Was there a most challenging song from their entire discography?
Good question. I didn't really get a chance to think about it all that much. Ewan sent me a list of the set list because things were gonna happen fairly quickly. So he sent me basically the set list, and I kind of put myself together a little playlist on my computer, and I kind of just played it in the car going to gigs because, as I said, I was also like super busy at the end of the summer. So I was like, man, how am I gonna even get to learn all this stuff? So I started by just going straight into the set list, and then obviously I'm still digging into some of the albums, and I'm still discovering some cool stuff. But for sure, some of my favorites. Oh man, which one would they be? Um, Rock and Roll Ain't No Simple Thing is definitely cool. Nobody, because of the guitar harmonies, and it's also a song I've heard so many times. Which other ones?
Is the crowd reaction the biggest for I Don't Know, or is there a different song that gets the people going
That
as well?
Yeah, that's definitely a fun one because it's you definitely get to hear the crowd singing it quite a bit. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of reaction. The show is a very well put together show. Like for me, it's the probably the fastest kind of. The show goes by so quickly in my head. It's almost a 2 hour show, but it's incredible how quickly it goes by.
Is it because
And
it's such a fun, energetic show? Like you're just
yeah,
swept up in the
yeah, and
extravaganza?
I think there's also it's a journey. It's not like the same thing over and over for 2 hours. The show starts off pretty rocking, and then there's like Bad Lieutenant, and then there's even a song that Seamus sings. That's actually I really enjoy that song, "A Good Man" off their latest record. And it's a Seamus song, and I think Ewan sings it on the record, but Seamus wrote it and he sings it live, and it's something those kinds of songs that are kind of more laid back are pretty interesting for me to do because I've normally been either more of a like you know power through kind of guitar player or whatever, and now that's given me more of like a Beatlesy kind of time on stage, and it's a different energy that I'm kind of pulling out of me and trying to like fit in with the band and the crowd. For me, the way I used to reach the crowd the most was like having the most energy. I would just put out so much. And I feel like having that different perspective now has made me grow as a musician, you know, which is amazing because I always look forward to getting better at what I do. And I feel like uh jumping on board with the Sheepdogs has made me look at myself from a different perspective. Another cool song is HMS Buffalo, which is an instrumental that always gets people going. We do a little bit of Allman Brothers kind of in there also. Man, the show is so much fun. To be honest, it goes by too quickly, and I think fans feel that way too. It's just there's so much to it. There's some old Sheepdogs, there's some new Sheepdogs, some new tunes. There's some hits, there's some instrumentals, there's some features of Ewan guitar solo, there's a drum solo, there's some keyboard solo, there's some B3 solos, there's Ryan, who is just a riot. Even from my perspective on stage, he's so fun to look at and great bass player, and he adds so much. He's kind of like the gel of the whole thing too, uh, and I get to do a 3-minute guitar hero solo in the set also, which naturally kind of happened. I always remember the very first show at the Burning Kiln Winery. We're looking at the set list, and he's like, "Feeling good." I go, "Yeah, feeling good." Yeah, the song is that. So just before that, we play Jesse Please, and then it kind of rings out. Can you just do like a bit of a like whatever there just before feeling good while we get ready
A
for the
little whatever, just a
yeah, a little
little
whatever.
whatever.
And it's like I remember hearing the live album with Jimmy on there. I remember there's a lot of feedback and a fuzz, and just before the riff kicks in, I go, sure. So I go down the set list one song at a time, and then oh boy, Jesse Please ends, and I'm like, I really don't know what's about to happen here, but let's go for it, pedal to the metal. I wanted up doing some started off with some feedback, but then it kind of escalated into this 3 minute guitar solo. And I'll always remember, I even saw some footage from that show online afterwards where the Ryan and Ewan kind of walked back, and then there was Seamus behind his keyboard. I don't think anybody, even including myself, knew what was happening. I just kind of like closed my eyes and started ripping a massive solo and ended up with a big feedback, and then and then the crowd and the whole thing, and it was like wow. We walked off stage and we had like bras thrown at us, and the crowd was going nuts. And I always remember you and the band saying, well, you could do that every night. I think we're in business. So we never really talked about it, but we've been doing that solo, that like guitar hero moment every night since. So it's been like, I don't know, 60 shows now, and it's still in there. So like I said, it's been a lot of fun because it's just been a natural kind of organic show. And I really dig that. I really think we need that more. Like there's no tracks in the show, which is I never played with tracks myself, but I know it's a big thing nowadays, and it's kind of like the norm, the click track and with the lights and the whole thing. This is like old school. It's like
Rock and roll, baby.
you have to make it happen. You know what I mean? So that's super exciting to me. It keeps it exciting, and that's probably the reason why it goes by so quickly, because it's the same set list, give or take, every night, but we don't really do the same solos, or there's always the highlights. We know what needs to stay there. We know what kind of can move, and we can improvise on for sure. But yeah.
So I have one final quote, and
Oh,
then we like to end with a rapid fire section. So I just rapid fire questions off, just quick answers,
okay.
and then we'll wrap everything up with a nice bow at the end. Does that work for you?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, so final quote. You know what? I've set the bar high with all these Canadian icons, so I got to finish strong. So this is from Mike Turner, former guitarist of the diamond selling band Our Lady Peace. This is what Mike Turner has to say. He says, Ricky is, above all else, a natural. He's a warm person to hang out with and has an easy way about him. Musically, in the context I've seen him at least, he's got the same ease and warmth. At the same time, he's got a sonic curiosity with guitar that we bonded over. Well, we were in an active combat theater and still geeked out about gear. There's a photo somewhere of him and I talking gear during sound check on stage at Kandahar Airfield, but the internet is too big for me to find it. I did try, though. That's from Mike Turner, former guitarist, Our Lady Peace.
Oh man, that's amazing. Yeah. Oh man, I love Mike. I've had the chance to see him a couple of times after our time in Afghanistan. That sounds so crazy. But yeah, we did go to Afghanistan together, and it was a great time. He's such a I would have to say the same thing about him. I like the fact that we're kind of, I don't know him that well, but I kind of feel like we're kind of the same kind of like easygoing, warm feeling. We bonded over gear, and then last time I saw him, we bonded over bourbon. We talked about our love for bourbon and scotch. So that was, yeah, man. Again, another person I get caught up into these things, and I just kind of like look forward, but I should reach out to some of these people, man. It's like it's reminding me of how, got to get out there and be more social a bit, maybe.
The pandemic, yeah, has
The
locked us
pandemic.
all away for 3 years. This
Man,
is the great
that's so nice. I
reunion
mean,
episode to bring
that's so
everyone
nice
back
of you to
together.
have kind of like gotten out there and gotten some quotes. I mean, that's very, I feel very fortunate to have that come back at me in this particular way, man.
You're very welcome. Yeah, the goal is not just to share your story and spread the word about the good work that you're doing, but also to make you feel something, for this to be memorable, to get the emotions involved. Just like your guitar playing, it's not just about the technical stuff. You want to get the
Yeah.
emotions across. You want people to feel something. So
We don't get the
translating that,
chance.
yeah, go ahead.
We don't get the chance to talk like in depth like we have just done right here, basically just one-on-one and share that with the world. It's normally like a 5 minute interview where you
Yeah,
go
tell
bang bang,
us
let's
about the
go.
new
Yeah,
single. Yeah.
and then where are you playing next? We're gonna find. Oh, thank you very much. It's like we basically like hanging out in each other's living room, which is great. I love this.
Yes, sir. So let's dive into the rapid fire questions section here. So there's a lot of questions, so we'll just go super fast through them. And this will allow our listeners to really get to know you on another level, because we're ticking
Okay.
off all these boxes.
All
So
right.
what would you be doing if you didn't become a musician?
Probably a farmer.
Farmer. I know you're a fan of biographies and documentaries. What are a few of your favorites?
Well, I like Down to Earth on Netflix,
Zac Efron?
with Zac Efron, and I also like a lot of the musical documentaries on there. One of them that comes to mind is the Keith Richards one and the Leonard Skinner one.
What's funny is during the pandemic, I went to see a therapist just to help with, we're all isolated and mental health. And she told me, I think you should watch Down to Earth with Zac Efron, because the other guy he's with, Darren Olean or something like
Yeah.
that, said, I think you could learn a lot from him. Like, you remind me of him, and you should see the good that he's doing. So my therapist made me watch a
Well,
documentary that you
did you
like.
get his book? He's got
I,
a crazy book, Super Life, I think it's called.
I read that
But
during the pandemic. Yes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
It's
that's
more
the
than
kind of
just,
farmer. That's the kind of farmer I'd be, actually.
yeah, more than just nutrition. It's like a way of
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
and how to be healthy and fitness and all that. Next question. Did you ever get to a point where you seriously considered quitting the music business?
Yes, but I had nowhere else to look, so I looked back and I said, no way, I can never quit the music business.
So you have a young daughter. In what ways did becoming a father change you?
Oh man, that's a
That
oof.
could be a full 2-hour deep dive, another
Yeah.
episode.
Again, it's made me a better person, and it's made me look at myself from a different perspective, and it's making me analyze situations in a different way and in a better way for sure, for everybody for sure.
Does your daughter think you're a rock star, or are you just some schmuck at home?
Well, for now, she thinks I'm a rock star because she sees me on TV, but she's still young, so I'm sure the time will come.
Rumor has it that you're passionate about pizza making. Is this true? And how did you get into it, if it is true?
100% true. I don't know how I got into it, to be honest. I got an uni oven, a wood pellet fired oven, and man, it's changed my life.
Who would you say are your all-time favorite artists? So you mentioned Aerosmith a lot. Any other bands or artists?
My all-time, yeah, Aerosmith, definitely on the top. There's as singers, there's Bob Seger, there's the Faces, and I would definitely have to say, obviously, there's the obvious Beatles and Hendrix for sure.
Which bands or musicians were you the biggest fan of that you've ended up being on the same bill with? So you mentioned like CCR, which is crazy. Anyone else that you actually ended up being on the same stage as?
Possibly Buddy Guy or Johnny Winter.
What's the biggest crowd that you've performed to, and what does it feel like to play to a crowd of that size?
Biggest crowd must have been around 100,000 people at the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City when I was 16, and it was crazy.
This is a
Um,
festival, or?
yeah, well, it's La Saint Jean Baptiste. So in Quebec, they have this kind of once a year. It's like Canada Day, but for Quebec, and they have a giant TV show and all the biggest artists that come from Quebec, and I was invited to that show after my first album, and we paid homage to Plume La Traverse, which is one of the biggest Quebec artists, and I sang one of his most popular songs, and I started singing it and I heard 100,000 people sing the same song with me, and it wasn't my song, but it definitely changed me forever. That feeling is like something I've been looking to like reproduce ever since, and it's definitely a thrill for sure. It's a it's there's something about having everybody on the same page doing the same thing, that many people at the same time. That's that's amazing. That's powerful.
Are there any artists or bands that you listen to that would surprise our listeners? Like maybe a guilty pleasure, like I like Justin Bieber, I like Taylor Swift, things that, people see you as the rock guy. Is there anything else you listen to that might shock our listeners?
Yeah, probably Sia.
Yeah. Some good
Yeah,
pop music.
some good pop music. I got into that more or less because of the producing side of things, and in a weird way, uh, I don't know if I should say this, but I feel like Sia is like almost like a female version of Steven Tyler in her singing. She's like it's wide open at all times, the intensity, and I really appreciate that. It's like, yeah, great.
Yeah, she's a great singer and a great songwriter and a very
Yeah,
unique performer, right? Never showing
very
her
unique. Yeah,
face on
exactly.
stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, are there any other musicians that deserve our attention that maybe our listeners aren't familiar with? So maybe one person or band you can think of that is incredible that you think more people should be aware of. So just a chance to give a shout out to somebody.
Oh man, for sure. I mean, he's known, but every time I see him, he does something to me. Lucas Nelson, Willie Nelson's son. In my head, he's pretty big, but I talk about him to a lot of people, and they don't know him at all. And I love his songwriting, love his voice. Also, like who I think he is as a person. I don't know him personally, but throughout some of his podcasts and some stuff he's done, I can really relate to him, and I feel a lot more people should know, his way of viewing the world. And yeah, Lucas Nelson.
I didn't even know that Willie Nelson had a son that was a musician,
There
and
you
I'm
go.
and I'm a massive music fan. So that
Oh yeah,
maybe
you should check
that's
him out.
that maybe that suggestion is more for me that I
And
need to
the
go
weird
listen
thing
to
is
that.
he's my age, and we didn't get to talk about this very much, but I got to learn how to play guitar watching Stevie Ray Vaughan live at Austin City Limits and Jimi Hendrix experience the album. And I read in an interview, his mom bought him that same VHS, and he listened to the same Jimi Hendrix compilation, and we're the same age, and there's a connection there that I don't know how it's made, but yeah, he's now doing country, but he did a lot of rock and roll stuff. You should definitely check him out for sure.
If you could sit down with anybody for a conversation, they could be living or dead, who would it be and why?
Ooh, man. Um, Probably he's probably still living. Well, he is still living. But Steven Tyler. He's had a major influence on my life. Just being who he is as a rock star, and had the chance to to meet the guys from Aerosmith, but not Steven Tyler. And I love to pick his brain on certain things.
Three more rapid fire questions. What is your biggest fear?
Oof, man, I don't know.
Sharks. No?
Not even my biggest. I don't have a. I don't.
No
I guess
fear?
I know
Fearless.
it's. I'm not fearless. Losing my hands, not being able to play guitar.
That's a legit fear.
That's yeah, all right, yeah. Because I don't really have any other. Like, I'm not afraid of death, or I'm not afraid of many things. I enjoy life every day as much as I can. But if I had to lose my hands and still live without those, I'd feel like I lose my voice, and I would probably lose touch with the world in a weird way. So that, yeah, that would be my biggest fear, I think.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to play. You'd still be able to listen to music. So I think if you lost your
Oh,
hands and your hearing, that would be game
yeah,
over probably. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This is getting very dark now. So what's the best live concert you've ever seen? So just any concert you've seen that is just mind blowing.
Aerosmith
I should have
in their
thought.
good days.
Yeah, I should have assumed that would have been the answer.
In their good days, yeah.
Yeah, final rapid fire question. Let's say you are wrongfully accused and you somehow find yourself on death row and you get one final death row meal. You can eat anything. You can have a drink with it. You can have a dessert. It's your final death row meal. What do you choose?
Oh, pizza.
Oh,
And if I could choose which pizza, probably either my own that I'd make
it's
or a
that
pizza
good.
from Pizza Bianco.
Pizza Bianco. Where's that?
Oh man, he's one of the best pizza gurus around. He's on Netflix. He went to eat some of his pizza in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Legendary.
All right. So I have just a few more questions. We're out of the rapid fire zone. So these are deeper. These are the hardest questions I've saved for last. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I'm probably most proud of having not really overanalyzed every situation, because I could have. As a kid, I would have probably been able to just analyze and say, oh, you know what? I'm good at this. I just take shit for granted. And I've not done that probably because I've seen other people do it and I didn't like how that felt or looked to me. Uh, and what was the other question? Sorry.
What are you most grateful for and what are you most proud of?
I'm grateful for all the fans and my family having supported me all that time. Yeah, it's I sometimes feel like I was, and I guess you have to, but I feel like I was a little selfish. It was a lot of it was all revolved around me, and I don't like that very much. And they never kind of made me feel that way. So I'm grateful that they were very supportive in the most positive way possible.
Now, if you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self. So you've had, 30 plus years of experience of going after dreams, achieving things, some failures, lessons learned. You've had mentors, all this stuff. If you could go back in time, you're sitting next to cute little 10-year-old Ricky and you can share words of advice. What advice do you give that little 10-year-old to help him through this life?
Write as much as you can and document all of that because there's so many ideas and so many things that I know I've had that I can't find anymore. And that's something that will never come back, and that's something that will never disappear if you document it well enough. Uh, and I've focused more on live performances, and I have no regret. But I feel like if I would have documented more of that, I would definitely be able to benefit from that quite a bit. It's tangible, right? It's also your legacy.
So,
I would
so,
definitely.
so we do something on the podcast where we have the current guest provide a question of the podcast that we then ask the following guest. So for example, on the last episode, I had Alpha Annabellini, who's in the super group Envy of None with Alex Lifeson of Rush and some other members. So he provided a question for you without knowing who is coming up next. So I'm going to ask
Okay.
that question and it's random. Sometimes it's funny or sad or inspirational. He has kind of a funny one here for you. And then after, if you can pay it forward and provide a question for the next guest who we don't know who it is. So this is from Alpha Annabellini from Envy of None. He's also a big engineer and producer that's worked with DMX and Nelly Furtado and Our Lady Peace and Blue Rodeo. So an awesome dude. This is his question. It has a little hockey related. So if you could take slap shots at someone, who would that be? And if you could co-write a song with someone, who would that person be? So two different people. I don't know if you could take shots on someone. I don't know if you have like a favorite goalie you want to shoot on or yeah.
I'm not big on hockey, to be honest.
Maybe a person you don't like that you just want to take slap shots at. I don't know.
Oh, actually, I didn't even see it that way. I was like, yeah, I really don't know. I wish I was able to answer that question,
That's
but
a strange
I'm
one.
not. Well, I'm not into hockey, so I'd be a fool to just try and pretend that I know a name.
That's all good, but we'll do the other one. If you could co-write a song with someone, is it Steven Tyler? I just have to assume Steven Tyler.
Yeah, it'd probably be Steven Tyler or Uh, it would be a band, but it would be probably the Faces.
Awesome.
I would like
And
to be able to do that. Those are the two
perfect.
ones for now. Yeah.
And can you now, just whatever comes to you, can you provide a question for the next guest without knowing who it is, male or female, age, profession, just any question that comes to mind that we can have fun with on the next episode?
If that person would need to take a year off and disappear for a year, where would they go and why?
You're off. Where and why? That's a good question. I like that. With no prior, you didn't get a chance to even think about it, and you came up with that great question. That's awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. So where can our listeners find you on social media? If they've been listening for the last 2+ hours, they just
Yeah.
want to reach out and say, hey, I love the interview, or hey, I'm going to come see you at the next Sheepdog show, or hey, I love the solo album. Where do they go to reach out to you, and where do they go to stay in the loop with what's going on? Any websites or social media?
Yeah. Well, for starters, Instagram is the one that I kind of gravitates toward the most. Ricky.paquette.music. Facebook is always good, but I've been mostly on Instagram. And I'm also just about to revamp my website, rickypaquette.com, that has all the links to the social media, including the YouTube channel, which I want to kind of like start feeding a little bit more. And there's a couple of live videos that are going to show up in the next few months of me playing the live album, the new solo album and stuff. So I'm kind of like all over the place, but the proximity effect would be more on Instagram for sure.
So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a guitarist, as a singer, as a songwriter, as a producer. You mentioned a few questions ago that, sometimes you felt like you've been selfish to pursue this dream. And yes, sometimes you pursuing the dream is at the expense of having less time for other people or other things. However, I have to say that it's with people like you that have this big vision for the future and really goes for their dreams. You achieve great things. You show the rest of the world what is truly possible if they also follow their dreams and don't just take any job and let their life pass them by. So at the detriment of a few other things, there's also a lot of good that comes from it by being kind of this guiding light to other people to know what is truly possible. So I want to commend you on that. I also want to acknowledge you for all your hard work and dedication over the years, and all of that has led to the opportunity with the Sheepdogs. And when that presented itself, because of all your hard work and dedication, you were ready to seize that opportunity, and you're now benefiting from that, which is amazing. I want to say that I'm excited to hear what you're going to do in the future with your solo stuff, but also with the Sheepdogs. I know they just put out an album last year, so maybe the next album is a year or two away, but if you are a part of that process, I'm excited to see what you bring creatively on the recorded medium in the future that will last forever. And then last but not least, I just want to say thank you for sitting down with me for the last couple hours for this interview. It's been awesome as a fan to pick your brain, ask all these questions that I want to know the answer to. As a musician and a guitarist, I got to see kind of the musician, the musician, but also kind of like a magician, seeing the tricks of how the tricks come together. So it's been awesome. So thank you so much for your time, Ricky. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joel. And I mean, it's my pleasure. It's always fun to share some good vibes, and it was great to talk to you. And thanks for all the quotes and the love that came back from those quotes. And thanks to Gordy Johnson to have introduced me to you. Yeah, for sure.
You're very
Anytime,
welcome.
man.
Perfect. So to our listeners, to the Ricky fans, to the Sheepdog fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you around, man. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.